My name's Joshua Ritter. I am an actor and a comedian. I'm also a vegan advocate. I stopped eating land animals in 2002 when I found out about factory farms and how the animals lived and their experience. And then in 2011, I carried that over to sea life, so sea animals, stopped eating fish. And then full vegan 2013 or 14, I'm not sure the exact date. That's when I cut out dairy and everything else. First, it was with cows and pigs and chickens, and I was handed a pamphlet from an animal rights organization. I can't remember which one now. And just with the photos and the information and the sort of experiences of veal calves and the cows and how the chickens were crammed together and all this stuff, just things I never thought of. And then I'm seeing this and I'm having a visceral response to it. And I say, well, how can I continue to perpetuate this? How can I continue to give my money to an organization like this and eat these corpses, knowing that this is the experience? And it was about the treatment at first. And after a few years, it started to dawn on me of, well, why eat them at all? Why is it just about the treatment? Well, they're not being treated well enough. But why eat them at all? And I would be just like most other people, form a bond with any of these animals, just like I would with a cat or a dog. I said, so what is it that sets them apart? So as those wheels started turning and I started sort of unlearning the things that I've unconsciously been taught my whole life, I started making different choices. And I said, well, I don't have to be a part of this. I don't have to perpetuate this behavior. So I don't have to keep these industries going. Me denying them my money is not going to stop them in and of itself, but I won't be funding them anymore. So let's start with that. And that was kind of my attitude towards the whole thing. And learning more about sentience of fish, eventually I started going down that road. And of course with the dairy industry, which as it turns out is one of the worst because it affects so many other industries. There was other things that came secondary but were still important, the environment. Global warming, all of the horrible effects that these sort of industries have, how they accelerate the destruction of the planet, making it unlivable for us, for everything, and saying, okay, well, this is all just negative. It's net negative. It's net negative. It's like I'm not going to take part in it anymore. So that's when I decided, to do as much as I could to sort of starve those industries of at least my money and support. Well, I certainly felt lighter in general. So I think I felt a lightness knowing that I was contributing to these sort of things and finally making that decision and taking that step. There was a psychological lightness, there was an emotional lightness to that, which was wonderful. But also physically. I mean, I remember the feeling of severe food comas. I still get sleepy after I eat sometimes, but it doesn't knock me out. It doesn't make me feel sluggish for hours like it used to. So I felt lighter. I felt lighter on my feet, a little more energetic. That was something I didn't expect. And just emotionally and mentally, I felt lighter. I felt like I was doing something that needed to be done, that was the right thing to do. And it's funny, there was people always ask like, oh, well, do you miss it? Or are you ever tempted? And it's when you get into that different mindset, that's not even a consideration, like missing it or being tempted or any of that, because you suddenly just have an aversion to the whole thing. It's suddenly like these sort of psychological walls or whatever go up where you say, well, no, I don't want any part of this in any way. I don't want these associations anymore. So yeah, there was never a feeling of that. And I thought there would be. I thought I might crave it or, crave some of the foods I used to love. But no, once I made that choice, it was not even a consideration. It never even enters my mind, which is great because there's not that feeling of struggling of like, oh, I really want that, if it's some sort of a chemical addiction, of having to struggle with, I really want this, but I shouldn't have it. There's none of that. So yeah, it was good. I feel like a lot of things are accelerating especially with the amount of information we have, the internet and everything else, that wasn't so ubiquitous like 20 years ago when I started this whole thing. It's this constant bombardment with information about what's happening, the cause and effect specifically of this industry, but of the effect it has on people, of their psychology. I don't see so much a sense of doing the right thing in the general public. There's people who want to do the right thing, and then there's people who really feel justified in just doing whatever it is they want to do, regardless of what the right thing is. And I feel like it's really important for those of us who feel like, it's when it's clear what the thing is you should be doing, when it's clear what the compassionate choice is, what the altruistic choice is, responsible citizen choice is, okay, we have an obligation to make that choice. And I feel like there's such an aversion to that right now. So for right now, I feel like it's important that I maintain that and sort of be a stand and an example for other people. Well, I'm never in a position where I want to tell people what to do. Because number one, I don't think it's effective. And I don't think it's, most people don't want to hear that. And they immediately get backed up about it. Yeah, but in an ideal world, yeah, I feel like everybody would be doing this. This is something that I've struggled with understanding. There are a lot of people who don't care about, what the animals are experiencing. They just don't care. I talked to somebody who's talking about going vegan for his health. And I was like, okay. And he asked why I wanted to go vegan. I said, it started with the animals. And he literally said, like, very casually, he was just like, oh, I don't really care about that. And, but it's true, a lot of people just don't. So that's a thing that I struggle with. But I feel like, if somebody's going for any reason, making those changes for any reason, whether it's their health or the environment or whatever, good, that's great. But the effect one person can have can be massive. But the amount of water that's conserved, the amount of lives that's saved, and the amount of dollars not going into an industry to perpetuate the behavior, it's actually quite staggering on a daily basis for one person. So that makes a huge difference. Anybody who has a sense of a greater good, of, there's more at stake than just what I want to eat, they'll realize that, oh my God, the positive thing I'm getting out of, let's say, eating meat or dairy or whatever, versus the sort of effect it can have on the world on a greater scale, it's staggering, the difference, because you get this much out of it. If you're like, if you're eating meat, if you're eating dairy, you get this much out of it, like that you're enjoying and experiencing, versus the effect you can have if you don't do that and you have something else. The effect is massive, it's huge. The effect on the planet, the effect on animals, the effect on individual health, and the industries take notice. You can see it in the advertising. You can see it. They struggle so much with this is real mayonnaise. That's the thing I hear a lot. Oh, this mayonnaise is real mayo. This is the real thing. It's like, what the heck does that mean? It's made just like it used to be. So that makes it real, as opposed to the other stuff, which is phony. And it's like, no, I eat mayo. I just eat it without the dairy. So it's they take notice and they struggle. These industries struggle, but eventually. It's also going to be a win-win, because eventually what they do is they pick up on the fact that, hey, there's a demand for this kind of stuff, and we're going to just change the way we do things to meet that demand. And that's something that that happens because individuals are making those changes and putting pressure on those industries. The biggest challenges have been, I would say that there are parts, like traveling can be difficult. So there's more of an inconvenience challenge. You have to work a little harder. If I'm traveling somewhere, I have to work a little harder, do a little more preparation to make sure I can find something somewhere to eat. That's not an insurmountable challenge, but it can happen. I have had challenges at work. If I'm on set, things can come up, but they're never anything severe. I remember I was doing this commercial and they wanted me to drink out of a cup to advertise this drink, but they had this huge array of drinks. I didn't mention that I was vegan ahead of time because I really just didn't think it would be a problem, because they have so many different kinds of drinks and different cups and straws and everything. And it turned out that they were really committed. They really wanted me to drink this big iced coffee with whipped cream and creamer in it. And I said, well, I can't really do that. And I explained I'm vegan, and it was a little tense for a little bit, as they were kind of like, well, will you get sick? Do you mind just sipping now? And I had said, honestly, I don't know how I'm going to handle it if I sip a little bit. If you do 20 takes of me drinking cream, I'm probably going to get sick. And I said, I don't really want to do it. So we worked out a solution. I said, give me an opaque straw and I'll mime it. I know how to mime it. I can make it look like I'm drinking. It's not that tough. And that's what we ended up doing. But there are little things like that that sometimes come into play. Occasionally, on rare occasions, it'll be tough to get enough vegan food on a set, but that's very rare. So there have been some work things, but again, they're really more inconveniences than actual challenges. Family has been very supportive. Friends, occasional people will make jokes about it, but it's becoming so common and such common practice now that it's not even a thing people joke about as much anymore. One of the things that I do is I generally don't announce my veganism to people. And it's not out of self-preservation or anything, but I find, like when I talk to people about veganism, if I do it as if, let's say I'm a missionary trying to convert them, it never goes well. It never goes well. They clam up, or they challenge me, or they get defensive, or it makes things uncomfortable, and I never achieve anything that way. I learned not to hide it, but I don't advertise it. And I don't, if it comes up, if the subject comes up, then I'll talk about it. And one of the powers of that is there'll be people I've known casually for years. They'll find out one day I'm vegan, and they'll be surprised by it, and then they want to talk to me about it. And the thing that I like about doing it that way is whatever preconceived notions they have about a vegan, whatever those judgments are, they don't get the opportunity to put those on me when they meet me. So now they know me, and they have whatever thoughts and feelings they have about me, and then they find out that I'm vegan too, it's inevitably going to shatter whatever assumptions they had. And then they feel comfortable with me to talk about it, and that's kind of how I like to do it, because then they start thinking, oh, he's just a normal guy, I hope they think that. He's just a normal guy and he's vegan, and this is not what I expected out of, I have all these ideas of what a vegan is, and now that I know him, and it's not obvious that he's vegan, he doesn't have a sign on him, he doesn't, he's not a problem to go out with. Like I didn't even realize he was just eating vegan. I feel like there's so much power in that because it's so normalized at that point, and people are much more open to talking about it and asking questions because I already have a relationship with them. So that's kind of how I handle those interactions. I let them ask me questions. If they find out I'm vegan either because they ask me or because, let's say I order something at a restaurant and I say, oh, but no cheese. A lot of times something like that'll happen. They'll say, oh, are you vegan? And say, yeah. And that's it. And I just leave it at that, and we just go on with our evening. And now they have an opening, and they can talk to me about it. When people ask me about it, we can have real conversations. If I tell them about it, and again, this is my experience, if I tell them about it and talk about why and all that stuff without them asking me, it tends to hit a dead end at some point. It tends to go nowhere. It has to be on their terms. And if it's on their terms, they feel comfortable, they feel relaxed, and they want to ask questions. And sometimes they don't want to ask questions. That's great too. I find for me, it's most effective to know, have information, have resources available, have all that stuff at my disposal, and let them start that conversation. And it's more of a passive way of dealing with it. It's more of being the example. I find that's really the most effective way to get those conversations going and have lasting conversations and follow-up conversations. And that's what I feel makes the biggest changes. I know some people take a more aggressive stance, and that works for them, that's fine. I'm much more comfortable with doing it this way, and I find that other people are more comfortable with me doing it this way. And especially with the feeling of like, I'm not here to convert you. I've dealt with people for all kinds of different things where you can tell they want to convert you in some reason, whether it's some sort of political thing or an activism thing or a religious thing. I've had lots of conversations with people, and as soon as I get a sense that they're there to sell me something more or less, I'm done. Like, I don't want to hear it. I don't care if it's right and true. I don't want to hear it. And that's how I feel a lot of people are. So I don't do that. I say, hey, my door's open if you want to ask me. If you don't want to ask me, no problem. We'll just get another beer and hang out, And that's the way I like to handle it. I'm raising my sons vegan. I don't know what kind of questions they'll have when they get older, what kind of curiosities they might have about non-vegan food when they get older. I have no idea. I think we're, at the very least, we can't control what the kids do when they get older, especially when they become adults. It's not up to us anymore. But we can instill a sense of principle, a sense of compassion, a sense of, hey, this is why we do this. This is why it's important. And we can hopefully instill that, and hopefully they'll take it with you. And I think as a parent, our jobs are to instill values and show guidance and show, compassion and protection and support. But we also have to let go of the result to a certain extent, because when kids become adults and they're making their own decisions about their own lives, I mean, that's up to them at that point. And of course, I'm never going to encourage abandoning veganism. And I'm hoping that they will stay vegan their whole lives. But I think there's a power in being able to say, you know what, though, they are going to be their own people and they're going to make that decision. And the best I can do is help them make the right decision, but I can't make the decision for them. I feel like it takes a lot of pressure off having to try to get somebody to do things a certain way when it's really not entirely, you don't have that power. You just don't have that power. So there's a sense of understanding the limits to what you can do and what your purpose is. I feel like as a parent, it's not my purpose to dictate their whole lives, but it is my purpose to give them information, values, support, live it through example, and answer questions and encouragement, all those things. But at the end of the day, people are going to do what they do. So that's not up to me. I don't know if it would have been easier because, in terms of not having to make the transition into veganism, obviously that would be easier in a very sort of practical sense, and a health sense, certainly, to be in that habit. In social sense, that's something to consider. Would it have been easier? I think, I'm in my 40s, being raised vegan back 40 years ago. That might have been difficult socially for me. With other kids and things like that. But I really don't know. I haven't talked to a lot of people who are raised vegan, particularly in my age group. I'm not sure how many people were raised vegan in my age group. I think on certain ways it would certainly be easier. I think in a social setting. Also, I talk about the challenges of finding vegan food when you're traveling. I imagine that could be very difficult 30 years ago, 40 years ago, to even at schools or, at jobs and stuff, to be able to figure out, okay, how are we going to eat vegan every day? Because we have so many options now. It's so easy now. It's really easy to be vegan right now. It was a lot harder back then. So I think in some ways it would have been harder, and in some ways it would have been easier. I don't really look at things that way because, wishing things were different in the past, especially things I couldn't control, it's kind of pointless for me to do that, to sort of take up my time and energy and think about that. Because if I come to the conclusion, oh, I wish I would have been raised vegan, I wish I would have, then there's this sort of longing in there of suffering over something you can't do anything about. I wish, this person was still alive. I wish this job had gone differently. Well, it didn't, and now we're moving forward. You can learn from it, certainly. So I just don't really look at life that way. I wish all these things were different, just because I don't think it's practical. So, but that being said, if I see value as I do, in raising somebody vegan, and I am raising my sons vegan, I'll certainly apply that, and I'll say, oh, if I was raised vegan, XYZ would have been easier. This would have been better. I'm going to raise my sons vegan, and just take the lessons and just put it into the future. I don't spend time having regrets. I look at it just a lot more practically. I could certainly make an argument that, oh, I should have gone vegan sooner. Maybe I should have gone vegan sooner. I certainly don't regret going vegan. Should I have gone vegan sooner? Maybe I should have, But again, there's nothing I can do about that. I know that being vegan is right for me. I think it's the most compassionate choice. It's the most generous choice. I think it's the most human choice. And that's why I encourage people to do it. I'm certainly glad I did. I don't have any regrets about going vegan. Could I have done it sooner? Maybe I could have, but I didn't. And I'm here now, and I'm very happy with that. I'm very happy with that. I had a process I went through. I wrestled with things mentally, emotionally, justified things, and I can look back at that and kind of take a look at that and say, oh, maybe I should have done things a little differently. Maybe I could have done things a little differently. But again, I don't carry that into regret. I say, okay, I learned from that, And now I'm going to keep going forward. And if anybody has, questions about it, then I can address it, like I am right now. Number one, it started with the land animals, and that was a clear choice. That was obvious to me. My views of fish back in 2002 were more like, well, they're not the same thing. It's not on the same level. They don't have awareness. They don't have intelligence. There's no sense of urgency there. My sense with dairy was the same sort of thing. Was like, well, we're not, killing these animals and torturing them. Yeah, we're taking the milk, but a lot of that was ignorance on my part. Not really fully comprehending what was going on, not comprehending the complexity and sentience of all animal life, the horrible effects of the dairy industry, and all of the way that spider webs out, robbing the mother of the baby, and the veal calf life, and the experience of the mother being impregnated over and over and having the babies taken away, and then using the milk. I look at it now, I say, well, I can't have any part of this. This is wrong. So I didn't look at it that way. I think I made a lot of justifications. I think also I had a sense of it's impossible to be vegan. Back 20 years ago, I just thought, well, it's impossible. How could you do it? Dairy's in everything. What would you eat? I think I let a lot of those things stop me. And I think as I started learning more and I started learning better about what really goes on with the dairy industry, what goes on with sea life, and especially the effects in the environment and everything with the acidification of the oceans, I started thinking more about, well, wait, why am I still doing this? There was sort of that moment of like, why am I still doing this? And I finally said, no, it's time to stop doing this. That's enough. I can honestly say I wasn't really pressured by people. I've heard people say, oh, if somebody would have pushed me, if somebody would have gotten in my face and challenged me about it, I think I would have broken down and I would have gone vegan sooner. I think it's the opposite for me. If somebody would have come to me with that sort of approach, I think I would have been like, very defensive and say, okay, no, now you're being, you're getting in my face. You have to back off. I get very turned off by that. I don't think it would have worked on me. It was really a combination of willful ignorance. It was a combination, I think, of ignorance that I came by honestly, of sort of buying into the idea that it's not so bad. And I think fear that it would just be too hard, fear that I wouldn't be able to do it, not in a sense of willpower, but it would be so impractical I would not be able to find a way to live vegan every day. When I finally cut out the last vestiges, which was just cheese, I think, it was certainly much easier to do. I could have done it back 20 years ago. It would have been possible. I felt ill-equipped to do it. I think that's part of it too. I just was intimidated by it, and so it was a combination of different things. Yeah, there was. Actually, the first time I thought about it was when I gave up, chicken and pigs and cows. When I gave that food up, I remember hearing about veganism. Vegetarian was what we were saying back then. Vegan, I think the term existed, but it wasn't like everyone's talking vegan like they do today. It was like vegetarian. When I heard about vegan, when I learned about it, my first thought was like, oh, well, that's taking this way too far. That is so extreme. I remember thinking to myself, well, I'm not crazy. I can't give up all those things. There'd be nothing to eat. I remember having that kind of mental attitude about it, yeah. I don't worry about any specific nutrients because there's really nothing, as far as I know, and I'm not an expert on it, but there's really nothing that you lack with a vegan diet if you eat vegan. Again, if there's anything that, oh, well, I usually get this thing from meat or I get this thing from fish, it's like, well, you can still get that thing. You don't have to eat that. You just get it through, a supplement, a vitamin, that kind of thing. So I don't worry about that. I certainly have never had any numbers in my blood work or my physicals or anything like that were out of whack, where I was deficient in anything. I've had no issues in that regard, health-wise, with what I'm ingesting. So it's not, that's never really been a concern for me. I'm healthier now that I'm vegan than I was before I was vegan. I'm in better shape, and exercising too. I mean, it's part of the whole. So I don't really do anything different to compensate. I take vitamins more, but that's really more. I'm getting older and I'm trying to stay healthy. I exercise more because I'm getting older. I'm trying to stay healthy. So there's things like that. When I was 20, I'd stay up all night drinking and eat cheeseburgers, at 6 in the morning because I was 20, but I'm not 20. So now I'm exercising, taking better care of myself. So in terms of for veganism specifically, honestly, going vegan has made it so that I don't have to supplement. I don't need medications, and one of the reasons because I'm vegan. It baffles me. I don't know. I mean, I don't even know how to approach that. People are doing things like that for some reason that I don't understand, and they're getting something out of it, or they think they're getting something out of it, and I can't relate to it at all. That's really all I can say about it. I don't really want to mock people, but again, it's confounding. It's just confounding to me. And then you hear about some of their experiences of eating like straight meat and nothing but meat, and the kind of things they take to try to supplement it, and the health issues they're having. And I say, okay, I don't understand it at all. I always like to say, don't sprint in blind. I know there's a lot of people say you can go vegan today, do it, and that's fine, but don't do it stupid. Because people don't understand often that they're gonna feel differently. And I mean, you could eat nothing but potato chips and beer and be vegan. Don't do it dumb. You got to do it smart. You have to understand also what are the things you crave. I knew too many people who said, I went vegan and I tried it for 6 months and I hated it and I couldn't do it and I felt like crap all the time, and so I had to go back. And now the door is closed in their mind. Oh, I tried that. It's done. Didn't work for me. I hear that all the time. And that is much worse, in my opinion, than not even trying to go vegan. It's much worse. So I say to people, make sure you're informed. Is there a certain thing that you're really crazy about that you can't imagine giving up? Like cheese is a very common one. All right, good. First thing you want to do, let's find you some cheese that you really like, some vegan cheese that you really like. Make sure that you're eating healthy, you're eating balanced. If you're used to eating burgers or whatever, let's find some junk food burgers you can replace that with. Now, if you're doing it and trying to eat healthier, okay, but make sure you're trying stuff. Try stuff out first before you just take this leap. Get some information, because if you do it the right way, you can do it quickly. But if you do it, with your eyes closed, you could run into a lot of problems that you didn't anticipate that might have more to do with your psychology or your cravings or your addictions. That you didn't manage properly. And a lot of people go, oh, I failed, can't do it, now I'm done with veganism. And it's like, no, that's the worst outcome in my opinion. So yeah, I tell people, what I really do is I direct them to Karen, my wife Karen, because she's a vegan transition coach. And she knows all the products, all the approaches, health, everything, and she will talk people through on their individual journey, on their process. This is the best way to do this. CompassionateFarming.org. That is our charity, 501c3. It's an educational vegan charity. I co-founded it with Neil Cohn and my wife Karen. She would probably be better to give you more details about resources than me. I often defer to her. I didn't have to learn all the resources because she knows them. And I live with her, so she can tell me anytime. So yeah, I would defer to her on that. I'm not a repository of information like that. I hear people struggle with family, like around Thanksgiving. They struggle with friends. But I don't know a lot of people who quit for that reason. I think it's a thing that frustrates them, and this is why people tend to gravitate towards other vegans. There's a lot of vegan groups, a lot of vegan social events. People love being surrounded with other vegans so they don't have to deal with the judgment and the anger. There's a lot of anger for some reason, like you're doing something to somebody. I find that people often will do it again because they feel like they have low energy or something. Or the cravings. I had a friend tell me, my cravings for, I don't remember what it was. Let's say steak, for example. My cravings for steak never went away, and so I couldn't take it anymore, so I stopped being vegan, There are ways to manage that. it would depend on what specific food, but I've always been a big proponent of replacement. You know, if you have a really strong, like my thing was always sandwiches. I still love sandwiches. I used to go to diners up in New Jersey. I'd just get cheeseburgers all the time. And it wasn't about the meat, it was about the sandwich. And it was hard to get sandwiches that were vegan, you know. A lot of people love that kind of thing. So for me, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna find the vegan burgers. I'm gonna find the vegan cheese. I'm gonna make myself an awesome vegan sandwich with, you know, I eat tofurkey slices, stuff like that. I will make an awesome vegan sandwich. I'll find places that have awesome vegan sandwich. I'm gonna replace, you know, that's my thing. That's what I'm gonna do. And that's what I encourage people to do. If they have those strong sort of things, let's replace it. Let's replace it. So that's, I think that's one of the biggest things people say. But again, like I said before, you gotta educate. You gotta talk to a vegan transition coach, do some research, know exactly what you're getting into before you just sprint blindly into it, and then you'll be able to do it responsibly. I mean, honestly, it doesn't apply specifically to veganism, but I think it applies. My philosophy on how to sort of move forward with things is be the change you want to see in the world. You know, this is one of my favorite quotes. It's like, it's not just about, you know, sort of a passive encouragement, being an example. It's about, if you believe in something, you have to live it. If you believe in doing something a certain way, if you believe in having a certain set of values, a certain approach to life, you have to live that way. And it doesn't mean you have to be perfect. You don't have to, you know, you're allowed to make mistakes, whatever. But at the end of the day, every day should be an effort to be what you want to see. And I apply that to veganism, but I also apply it to interpersonal relationships. When I'm online at the post office, I try to joke around with the people online because I don't want to stand there bored and irritated, you know, standing online in the post office. I want people to be laughing and, you know, enjoying themselves to the extent that they can. It's that sort of attitude of saying, this is how I want the world to look, so I'm going to do my best to do that every day. And that, be the change you want to see in the world, I think it just sums it up perfectly. I think we will see a vegan world one day. I think it's inevitable at this point. I think there's so much momentum behind the movement. I think that a big part of it, unfortunately, but it's happening, is making it easy for people, making it accessible for people to go vegan, making it acceptable for people, socially acceptable. Vegan options are all over now. There's wonderful restaurants. There's so many options in grocery stores. And granted, it's not available to everybody right now. There's plenty of food deserts where there's no nutritious food at all available to people. So, you know, this is going to be a thing that's going to continue to trickle down into, you know, less privileged communities. But I think it's an inevitability because outside of what I hope is sort of a mass consciousness shift that's happening, outside of that, there's the practicality sense, which is the world can't sustain 7 billion people eating meat. It can't. It's impossible. It's impossible for it to continue that way. Eventually, it's going to have to stop. It's not enough that people will just cut down. I think it's going to start that way. But people are going to start to realize, well, there's no other way to do this. There's no other way for the planet to sustain us. There's no other way for me to say, oh, it's okay to contribute to this sometimes, but not other times. It doesn't make sense. I think a lot of people are going to get faced with that contradiction. I think a vegan world is inevitable. It becomes more and more accessible, easier to get, and industries who are shifting their techniques because they see the writing on the wall. They want to stay alive. They want to make tons of money. They want to give consumers what they want. We got Hellmann's making vegan mayonnaise, all sorts of milk alternatives now being produced by dairy companies because they see McDonald's has a vegan burger. You know, I mean, I never thought I'd see that day, ever. I remember when they had a vegetarian burger at Burger King like 20 years ago, and it was shocking. And I think they stopped offering it. But now it's got those fast food companies are offering these things. I think it's inevitable. I think it's going to happen. I'm excited to see it happen. I hope I get to see the full completion of it, you know, while I'm still around.